Welcome back to the Treehouse. We are the Fallen Fruit. I'm Catherine Urban.
I'm Stephanie Janese.
Lynette Ramos.
And today is August 12th, 2019. And today we are talking about snakes and serpents. So the reason why we're interested in this topic, we're starting to branch off a little bit. We are interested in a lot of the symbols that kind of unite a lot of our dark goddesses. So today we're specifically focusing on snakes.
Yes, we are.
So we've talked a little bit about snakes already on the podcast. I know specifically in our Medusa episode, we kind of went in. But we're going to elaborate a little bit more here today.
So much to talk about on this.
Yeah. So much. Yeah. We see snakes represented in the symbols and cultures of many continents. Like we see them on all the continents and prominent in a lot of different cultures. So we're going to kind of dissect a little bit today.
Yeah. That was part of the most fascinating thing for me in the research, is seeing all of the parallels. And that it wasn't just this one specific location, but like you said, it's, you know, in South America, in the Americas, in China, in Africa, in the Mediterranean. I mean, it's like there's a different spin on it potentially, but I mean, that ancient knowledge is pretty consistent everywhere.
Yeah, it's one of the most like represented creatures across every type of like religious text, story. There's just like so much powerful medicine.
And yet there's as much allure as there is fear.
Lots of fear.
Yeah.
This past weekend, I actually got to play with some snakes.
Yeah.
They were beautiful. Shout out Crystal and Luna, the ball python. And the other one was a ghost corn snake.
Ooh.
Right. I'm in love. But I'd never really like handled snakes all like that. I do know that they've been coming to me in the past few recent years. But I was kind of nervous because I was like, oh, I don't know. There's that fear that, you know. But no, man, they are like gentle and loving and so chill. And somebody was like, I don't really like snakes because I heard that they don't have emotions. And I was like, I beg to differ, because we had some intimate moments, those little snakes and I.
Aww.
Yeah, I was surprised that you said loving.
Yeah.
How does a snake display love?
Actually, it was really cute. So this one was the ghost corn snake, who was named Luna. And Luna was wrapped around my right arm, and I kind of elevated it, you know, kept it by my chest area. And then she wiggled her little head and like laid it right on my heart.
Aww.
And I get it. Like there was a beat there. So she was probably like, oh, tight.
Yeah.
But it just seemed like a very sweet and like authentic moment. And I was like, you can say whatever you want, science, but the snake and I.
And isn't like their little slither tongue, isn't it like kind of soft? It feels like
yeah, so
tickle.
it licked my nose. It was really cute. That's how they smell too, is with their tongues.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're blind, and then they don't have a sense of smell like we have a sense of smell.
Is that all snakes?
I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, but maybe like their physical eyes don't work super well, so it's the tongue that really is like their primary sense.
Yeah. You made me think about my son. He had a pet snake that he would feed like the mice to and all of that.
Yeah.
And then one morning he got up and he couldn't find the snake.
Oh no.
So we think he like left the little whatever it's called. What is that thing called? The tank. Yeah. He think he left it cracked open and it escaped. And we lived in an apartment building at that time. And I thought someone was going to come knock at our door. But we have no idea to this day where it went.
Probably was like living in the walls.
And it's still there to this
really
day.
Want a pet snake now.
Me too.
I'm like, I want to make that happen. Manifest that into my life.
So wait, what kind of snake did your son have?
You know what? I'm going to have to ask him. I have no idea. I think it had like a little bit of a red tone to it, but that was like several years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was like in like actually no, I think he was like in 4th or 5th grade actually.
Damn.
Okay.
So it was a long time ago, but I'll ask. But I've never really necessarily wanted one until I saw that. Like when I saw you handle them, I'm like, I think I need to be more in touch with that energy. Like I want to, you know what I mean? There's something about that felt like
So real quick, I'll just talk about a little bit about why I guess I'm so attracted to them. They've always had this allure, obviously. And growing up, like, I do have this fascination with, like, those Bible stories and things like that. And the snake being, you know, the creature that Satan chose to come up to earth as and talk to Eve as. And, but it wasn't until my adulthood and I started dabbling with plant medicine, DMT in particular. But when you kind of like go into your, I guess, trip, quote unquote, for me, there's like something that happens. It's almost like you get sucked through this tunnel to prepare you into this vision. And each time that I've done it, it has been black snakes have been the tunnel. That's what's been like lining and like moving in the tunnel that like sends me through. And then, so I was like, oh, okay. Then they just kept popping up. I would just see them, see the symbol, see artwork, whatever it was. When I was in Chicago, actually a year ago for a work trip, I was just walking down the street and there was a black, small, like plastic toy snake just on the sidewalk. And I walked past it because I was with a friend and they were like mid-conversation. I was like, I don't want to be this crazy person. They was like, hold on. But I did. And I was like, I got to pick up this snake. And so I did. And I still have it. It's like on my altar. But yeah, now they're just everywhere, kind of.
Yeah, I actually came across that in the research is that the snake or the serpent is the most popular archetype or being that people see in altered states of consciousness.
Yeah.
Wow. And so there was some talk around that. And that ties into also the Anunnaki, which is like the reptilian race that allegedly basically changed our DNA so that we can be more of like this hybrid species that was more like in like this slave mentality. And so if we are made from them, then that would explain why some of us feel connected to it, because that may be a part of our DNA.
Yeah. And so I'm glad you brought that up, Lynette, because when looking at creation myths, you see the theme of serpents a lot. So the Anunnaki, that myth largely derives from Sumeria, right? Well, when you look at the Dogon group, it's a West African group, and the Dogon actually have a lot of celestial knowledge. The Dogon knew about Sirius, the star. There was a lot of talk recently about the Lion's Gate. It's basically the heliacal rising of Sirius. Sirius is allegedly our spiritual sun. It's thought that our sun might be a distant, like part of a tertiary star with Sirius.
Yeah.
Science hasn't confirmed that. But anyways, the Dogon knew that Sirius was a binary star. So A and B. And they just kind of rotate around each other. And the Dogon knew that it had a 50-year orbit, a 50-year cycle with these binary stars. They also knew about how many like moons were on Jupiter. And like, so basically this is a quote unquote primitive group that had a lot of knowledge of the stars. How did they know? They say that a group of beings came from Sirius. So their creation myth is basically like the gods made the sun and the moon, and then they made the earth from a lump of clay. Sounds familiar. And then they made twins. Interesting, right? And then basically they say that these beings were serpent-like, and they were also amphibious. And they made humans with half their DNA, half Earth. Yeah. And so you see that reptilian myth there, and you see that in other cultures as well. Right. You see that with the Mayans as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is like a little bit of science with the like blood types. So apparently if you have like O negative blood, you're obviously a universal donor. So you can give blood to anybody, but you cannot accept blood from anybody but also O negative people. But it's said that what's the difference is O negative is missing the rhesus factor, and that is the factor that ties humans to the rhesus monkey. So that's what ties us to primates. And people with O negative blood do not have that factor, so it is thought that they have reptilian blood so that they did come from. And then if you look into like the creation myth of it, like there's that scientific part, but then it's been taken as far as back, saying like, well, those people came from serpent people.
Yeah.
I have O negative blood. So I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So how do you fare when the temperature changes?
Not very well. I like to hibernate underground if I could, which I can't, and it really bums me out. But I do. I like heat. I like the hot hair. The stickier, the better. Also, too, so with my children, like being pregnant, I had to have a Rogam shot, which puts that RH factor into your bloodstream. Because if not, your body attacks the baby. And it's happened to other women with O negative blood in my life. I've happened to like run across those people. But I had somebody in my past who passed away because she had a miscarriage and the blood got into her blood, and it was...
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's definitely some science behind it. It's not all mystical, but...
Yeah. And there's also the Emerald Tablets, and there's certain ancient texts that even they say the Bible is based on that talks about this as well. So a lot of the researchers, when they're digging into this stuff, they're starting to see a lot of the ancient texts reflect this information as well. Mm-hmm. So it's starting to become, like you said, more and more, let's just say, science-based, because of all of the parallels. And because if something is etched in stone, the idea is they didn't take the time to etch in information unless they felt that it was important. So if you're writing or etching in the Emerald Tablets and it's taking all of this time to put all this information in, why would they do that if there wasn't an amount of significance?
Right.
They wouldn't take the time to just write down entertainment. So if you see the different ancient sites and all of the etchings, is that what it's called, and all of the art and all of the sculptures, a lot of these, there's a lot of similarities all around the world. Mm-hmm. And even it made me think, when you talked about being underground, they say that these serpent beings live underground. And what's interesting is that when Stephanie had a quantum healing session and we did like this healing thing, she went underground. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, she went underground.
And when I've had like that DMT trip, well, the several that I've had, every time it's like that I've needed to feel like calm, or that I've needed to feel like I need to get in touch with like my true spirit, I've been in the middle of the earth. Just like in fetal position. So maybe,
like you're being
I didn't think about the correlation between that until you mentioned it.
It just, when you were talking about it, because, and this I think is a perfect time to talk about the association with serpents and dragons, because like Quetzalcoatl, he was a being that in Mesoamerica, and they say that he is basically Thoth, which is the person that wrote the Emerald Tablets. And, he's known as Hermes potentially Jesus.
Yeah.
He has potentially some other lives going. And in like Peru and South America, he's referred to as the serpent. The feathered serpent, which is potentially the dragon. And there's a lot of references between the as above, so below, so that the feathered serpent can fly, but it can also be on the ground.
Yeah.
So that's the as above, so below.
Yeah, actually, we see that a lot in mythology too, that like the serpent can go below the ground, and then as the feathered serpent, it can fly. So this is a multi-dimensional, interdimensional being. Mm-hmm. The other thing to mention about Quetzalcoatl is that Quetzalcoatl is said to have brought humanity, mathematics, and sciences. Mm-hmm. So when we look at the Mayans and the Aztecs, they were very, very advanced.
Yes.
And so they say that this knowledge came from the serpent. Mm-hmm. In other cultures, we see the serpent associated with knowledge and wisdom. Mm-hmm. But, on that note as well, which we're going to, of course, have so much more to say on, but just briefly, like, knowledge, it can sometimes be harmful. Like, have you ever been at a time in your life where you're like, I know too much?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. The whole idea that like ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. You can't go back kind of thing.
Yeah. So we see this a lot with the serpent, is like the dosage. We talked a lot about that in our Medusa episode, but yeah, it's a lot about dosage. That's a theme here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. There's even some I came across some references where the serpent was affiliated also with the sun in terms of the base word of snake. And it talked about how the sun can give you life. It nourishes you, as the venom of the snake had a lot of healing ability. And also the snake also can poison you, as with the sun, it basically keeps track of how long you'll be here. Yeah. And it counts the days until your death. So it's like the birth and death reference.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, snakes are rebirth, transmutation, all those things. And thinking about like the bringing in of, I had exactly what I was going to say and I forgot.
That's okay. It'll come back.
Yeah. Yeah, but go ahead.
I was just going to say, on that note of the sun too, like the sun gives life, but it can also squelch it. Like if you don't have enough water and the plant is just in the sun, it can kill it.
Done.
Oh, fire. That's what it was. Like how they are sort of significant too with fire, and it's that death and rebirth and that sense of creation. That's, creation myths.
Yeah.
So, all of it.
Speaking of death and rebirth and creation myths, so there are a couple constellations in the sky, and the first that have to do with the serpent. The first one we've talked about on here as well. It's Asclepius. Asclepius is also known as Ophiuchus if you go Roman, and Ophiuchus is the Serpentbearer. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Ophiuchus is not a zodiac sign. I'll tabletop that rant for another day. But anyways, Ophiuchus is the Serpentbearer. It holds the constellation of Serpents. And Serpents is divided into two pieces, the head and the tail. And this constellation is found just around the Libra and Virgo constellation. And the myth of Asclepius, so we're going Greek now, this is like the Greek version of it. So Asclepius was a healer, and he killed a snake, and he watched another snake bring it an herb and bring it back to life. So Asclepius learned from these snakes how to bring people back to life. So you see like the elixir of life. You'll see this as like an alchemical symbol with like a serpent like line through it. So there's that part of the story. So Asclepius was a healer.
Yeah.
And we talked about Asclepius also in the Medusa myth as well. So, and that being said, that like basically the venom of the snake, or I'm sorry, the venom from the Gorgon head had equal potency to kill as it does heal, but it's about how you use it.
Yeah. That's the alchemical thing. Like they even say that potentially they would mix the blood of the snake, because if let's say the snake bites an animal and it watches it until it perishes, and then it ingests it. So there's something that happens alchemically where that snake is able to take in that venom and not kill itself.
That's fascinating. I never even
so they're saying that potentially that, and even with Christ, when they talk about like the communion with the wine or the blood of Christ with like the what is it, the manna or whatever. So there's a reference there of like combining those two things together is what creates some sort of healing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So as we mentioned, that serpents can go below the surface as well as like come up above and fly. So in the Serpents constellation, there is the Eagle Nebula. Ooh. And the eagle, of course, has a lot to do with getting above and soaring. Interestingly, the zodiac sign Scorpio has a lot of different transformations. So it is a sign that deals with death and rebirth. It is a sign that deals with transmutation. And this is a symbol that it can be represented by the scorpion, but it can also be represented by the serpent. It can also be represented by the eagle and the phoenix.
Yeah, I was just blown away. It's almost like, when you dive into a topic and you begin to uncover some things, it almost like leaves you with more questions too. Cause like, it was to me, it was mind blowing because I never knew how much serpent worship was so widespread, and I even came across information that, Jesus was born in a city that basically meant serpent or was translated, and that at least there was serpent worship there. And even when Jesus died, they say that they gave Jesus venom, some sort of alchemical venom on the cross. And when he died, remember when the story was when he was resurrected, he left his shroud. Another parallel to snakes, because what do snakes do when they rebirth? They leave their skin.
So interesting.
So they're thinking that there may have been some parallels there that I don't know if he was necessarily a serpent worshiper, but it was in that culture at the time.
And they've also like removed the word reincarnation from the Bible, but isn't that like such a beautiful allegory for reincarnation? Like the snake just shedding its skin and then getting a new shell, basically.
Just keeping it moving.
And so when they're in shed, though, that's why like mystics and shaman believed that, you know, it looked as though snakes could travel, like you said, as above, so below. They can be here. They can go to the underworld. That when they shed, they have this trance-like look, like their eyes get that milky film. They turn this pinkish hue. They just believed it was because, they're between here and there. Ooh. They're in between the worlds right now. And when they shed their skin, it's like, okay, they've done that work.
Interesting. So they literally like kind of look like they're dying a little bit.
Yeah. So you would think something's wrong with it. But even in the sense when we go through changes, it feels like the highs of, you know, being above ground, like we're here, we're doing our thing. And then you reach those pits of the underworld. And it is sort of like, I'm in this in between now. And thinking, you know, like we go little deaths everywhere, like on the daily. And that snake medicine is just that reminder that even though you're leaving something behind, you're still going to come out of the other side.
Which is what we've been talking about with the dark goddess. And that's why it's so intertwined, is because it's going into the underworld, but coming out revitalized and powerful and more wise.
More knowledgeable,
So another note that I want to interject here too is it's like, okay, so we also have that part of our brain, like the serpent part of the brain, the reptilian brain. The reptilian brain. And so that part of the brain is a little bit more about like survival, right? Like you mentioned, like it can be kind of dog eat dog. And snakes, like when they're fending for themselves in the wild, one of the things I learned in a documentary I just watched on snakes is that they really just like seem to live in really harsh environments, and it really is about survival. So like these are highly instinctive, highly resourceful creatures. And I mean, they're not vegetarians, you guys. like you said,
they're not all love and light.
No, they'll bite something and then like watch it die for a few days.
Yeah, like I'm just gonna wait patiently. And you know, there was a UFC fighter, and I don't know enough about that world, but I saw him on Joe Rogan, and he would actually microdose with psilocybin so that he connected with his reptilian brain, so that when he was in the ring, it wasn't about, I feel bad for like crushing this guy's face in, but because of his career and his money, that's how he worked with psilocybin.
I cannot imagine taking psilocybin
and then whooping ass.
Well, I don't know if he did it in the ring. It was in his training.
Okay.
Because he was, you're right. You're like, wait, pause. No, it was in his training.
Never wanted to get in a fight while I was on mushrooms.
Yeah. And that's what was so interesting in that conversation, is because most people don't. Like most people talk about working with psilocybin as being heart opening. But however he was connecting with it was helping him be more in that like savage. And honestly, like, that's one of the main things that I learned in this research is that, you know, obviously like the serpent snake symbolism has been demonized, right? But they talk about the fact that the snake initially already had that duality. Yes, it was, let's call it evil or dark. It was two sides. And I feel like we've been groomed out of that so that we can be more of like that slave mentality. So it's almost like everyone, it's like in general, we're supposed to act like, we're all good. And that's what we're striving for. We want to be light and love, but we're being like dominated and we're being controlled. So I think that it's like, now is the time to like, how can we bring back that reptilian primal power, right? So that we can use it with wisdom, but that we aren't so like domesticated and like easily managed.
Rewilding.
So it's like, I feel like that's one of the reasons that it's been demonized is because there's so much power. If you think about it, if you try to dominate someone that you know can turn on you and kill you, you will think twice about going after that being, individual, whatever.
Right.
But if you think that that person is afraid of going to hell and they're really like afraid of their power and they just want to be good people, that person is a target. If we think about it from that perspective. So
brainwashing.
yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's why they made the snake seem like, oh, it's associated with the devil.
Yeah.
It has, been demonized because they don't want us to understand that regenerative power that we have. They don't want, that's why they took reincarnation out of the Bible. They don't want us to know that there's more past this. They want us to live in fear now that we have to act right in this life. We have to follow the rules. If not, we're damned for eternity in hell.
Yeah. And I think that that's part of the programming of trying to like just put things in black and white categories of like good and bad.
Yeah.
And I love what you mentioned about the snake and just, it is dualistic and inherently like it is so powerful as like a healing regenerative. And like, oh, you get to start over, you know, but it's also poisonous and you should handle it with care.
Yeah.
I was watching Clash of the Titans last night and I was just admiring how, okay, so like Pluto comes up from the underworld. So now I'm hearing like, oh yeah, the snake, the devil coming up from the underworld, like crossing boundaries. Okay. And the whole thing is basically like in the Clash of the Titans, they're basically like the gods are having issues because the people don't want to pray to them anymore and the people are like, we're gods. And so Pluto's like, yes, Zeus, sky god, you need to trick them to make them worship you. And Zeus is like, yes. So Zeus is like down to get manipulative and that like makes him more believable. And again, like the Christian God is really modeled a lot off of Zeus, the sky god. So I just thought that was interesting.
It's, yeah. I mean, I think that as what brought us to this work, The Dark Goddess, I think that that's what we're doing is we're learning about ourselves and we're learning to look at our dark sides a little closer and how do we manage this energy? How can we use it with responsibility and wisdom versus using it for manipulation or control? So it's like looking back at those things and it's like, how can, like, I was interested, like someone was even saying people don't see goats or cows in their altered states of consciousness. They're seeing serpents and snakes. So it's like, what made it so, why the snake?
It's a great question.
Like that to me is just so, I think some of the information I came across answered it. Like of course it talked about like the venom being again healing or it could kill you, that type of like that full cycle. It just still fascinates me that it's the serpent,
Right.
And but I do know that it is one of the most basic animals just from that perspective, just from that reality. It's one of the most what would you say
common.
primal,
Yeah, it represents, sexuality as well.
Yeah.
And that is at the basics, like how we get here.
Yeah.
It is our foundation. It is our recipe. Without sex, we don't have life. So for it to be, it makes sense then because it's just tapped in there. Like our sexual primal nature is tapped inside of us, regardless of how much we try to squell it or water it down. That still lives in there. Like we all fucking want it.
Yeah. Well, you see the snake like next to Kali at the foot where she's like taking control. You see the snake attributed to Lilith as Lilith in the Garden of Eden. Like there have been paintings depicting the snake tempting Eve as both serpent and Lilith as a serpent. So we see, and we know that Lilith was a sexually liberated being who they tried to erase from history. So we absolutely see the serpent symbolism there.
Yeah.
In the Kundalini tradition, we work, so Kundalini literally translates to serpent power. And the whole idea is that when you practice Kundalini, you're trying to encourage the serpent, the sleeping serpent, to rise and climb up the spine and awaken all the chakras. So you have your spinal column, and then on other side, you have the Ida and the Pingala, which are two separate currents of yin and yang, and they intersect at each chakra. And so at any point in time, like you might have like your two polarities, like a little bit, like maybe one is working a little bit more strongly than the other. But the idea is that when you activate your Kundalini, you bring those two channels into one, and it shoots up the center of the spine, which is the Sushumna, and it awakens all of your chakras, and it brings you to enlightenment. And that is when, like, because a lot of us, we live like in our lower chakras of like survival and sexuality and ego. But then you get up into the heart, and then you get into the vibratory knowledge of creating with your words, with your throat chakra.
Yeah.
And then you have like your chakras of interconnection and psychic awareness and like connection to the universe up there. So when the Kundalini rises, it awakens all that. And you just start to become plugged in, and you start to see how everything's kind of interconnected. So what that energy is, though, is it is your creative energy. It is your sexual energy. So the cultivation of the Kundalini, it is sexual, it is creative, it's one and the same.
Yeah, and can be destructive. You know, they say like if you're not ready to have that awakened, you know, shit hits the fan, which, you know, again, it may not be a bad thing. You know how sometimes they say when you're awakening or you're going through certain, you know, dark night of the soul, sometimes it is about destroying your delusions and destroying your comforts and all of that. And so that's why some people are afraid of opening up that energy, but sometimes it's not going to be like pretty and, you know, polite and all of that. It's, I
can say from experience, I had a Kundalini awakening before my nervous system was able to handle it. And it was very destructive. Yeah. I didn't know it was real anymore. It took me a while to get grounded and figure it out. And actually, if you haven't gone through it, it sounds kind of hard to believe, but actually I think Kanye West went through that, because he starts talking like, I am a god. And
when he went through it when he wasn't ready, and that's when you kind of see all the destructive behavior. Maybe
here's the thing, it sounds funny, aren't we God though?
Well, yeah,
we are, but of course it depends upon how and what context we're using that, who you're talking to. When it comes down to it, we are, but it depends on, is it coming from ego or whatever the case. So it's a really weird conversation.
One of my favorite like spiritual quotes, I guess, is this quote by Buddha, and I'm sorry if I'm like not saying it correctly, please forgive me, but it's, if you see God or Buddha in the road, kill God. And it's like, no gods before you. And when we take those commandments, so to say, in Christianity, and everybody wants to apply them to this God, to this like father figure, white bearded, Morgan Freeman voiced God. It lives in the sky
outside
and it's
of
like
you.
Right. And it's like, no, those commandments make sense. Like, I don't want to kill. I'm really not trying to steal except from like Wall Street. But
you slipped that in there, didn't you?
Always, you know me. But you know, but it's, thou shall not have any idols before me. And it's like, turn that around on yourself. Like, why are you giving power to this outside source? Our lives change when we realize like all the power of manifestation, all the things I need live right in here, and like honoring that God and praying to that God. Yeah. Watching your life change of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because some of the beings that we talked about, like the Quetzalcoatl and the Thoth and the dark goddesses, when you look at ancient history, they're talking about creator gods, and then you're bringing up the idea of the Kundalini within us.
Yeah.
So it's like, to me, I looked at Kundalini energy more as like a metaphor, and I'm not so sure. I'm starting to take some of this information more literally. Like this serpent energy is me.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the whole idea, is that when you raise your own Kundalini, it is experiential, and you know, like it's there's not a question. Like you are part of the universe. Like it is the creator energy. You have that creative spark of creation, of being a creator. And when you activate the Kundalini, you experience that.
I mean, that's why maybe so many artists especially kind of live that torment, at least for some time. They go through those tumultuous kind of creative years, because that's what makes, you know, great art.
For sure.
Not always. You can make happy art. I've seen it. But
it's not as intriguing and
it's not
magnetic.
Yeah, like nobody wants to go to a poetry reading and hear everybody do like happy love poems. I will literally like slit my throat if I have to sit through that. Same thing with songs, like a couple, you know, here and there, but eventually you're like, no, I need
Let's
some
be
like
real here.
Let's be real. Like I need some like dark shit.
Well, the human condition is in itself tragic.
Right.
I mean, like you live and you die.
Yeah. But
know,
like
bad shit happens.
creativity and like sexuality and sexual energy, that's why it's so fragile. Like sex can like make or break a bond between two people.
Yeah.
You know, and it being treated in an unhealthy way or experimenting with it with several people creates this very fragile tether to all these people, and you're sucking in all this energy, and it is this really big force. And I was like reading something, and this quote popped up, and it was like, oh, you know, when you start seeing sexuality as creativity, you'll stop, you know, like fucking, and you'll start making art. And I was like,
can we do both though?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, but when you're like fucking with intention and with that like spiritual connection,
for sure, you're more intentional about it.
You're more intentional about it. You're not just gonna be fucking anybody. You're not letting, you know, just any old dick Harry
Juanito from like the corner
from
block.
the block get up in your Kundalini space.
and you go ahead.
Oh,
Catherine.
no, you go ahead.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead, because I'm gonna go a little bit off topic.
Okay, so yeah, this like fits though. Okay, so in the snake documentary I was watching, they were saying that there's a snake orgy that happens every like February when the
Stephanie.
Listen, I was actually conceived in February, no fucking lie, and both of my parents' birthdays are in February.
What?
Not
you heard it here, folks.
You heard it here, folks.
Okay, so yeah, it's the garter snake orgy, and it happens like in Canada, and it's basically like all the snakes are hibernating, and then the sun comes and starts to awaken them, and all the males awaken first, and they start warming each other up, so they like lump together and start warming each other up so that they can be ready to pounce when the females start waking up. And then they showed this one, it was like a man who like woke up late and isn't gonna get lucky, but then they start thinking he's a woman and start like warming him up, and he's like, yes, I'm a pretty girl. And then like, but they said it's like the greatest gathering of reptiles in the world, and it is literally a snake orgy.
Field trip.
Right. I really want to like be a gawker of this. Just saying. Like, what if I'm just like, oh, my parents, my family.
Well, we have garter snakes here in Ohio.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So
seen them.
That's funny. So the reason, so when I had put out some marketing around what we were doing, right? I can't remember what current event was going on. It may have been the rating of like the children's, like, what was I'm not into politics, so someone help me out.
Epstein?
No, when they were doing the raise and on the first day of school, like parents were getting torn out of like families, like they were being really
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The border crossing. I'm like, first day of school.
I
like,
never talk about politics, so I sound like an idiot. But anyway, the point
you're
is,
fine, yeah.
there was something significant, right? And after I did the marketing for this, I thought, I wonder will people think, why are we talking about something like this when there's something that's going on that's so real and so prevalent, right? But for me, I feel like a lot of this ancient knowledge is coming forward so that we can begin to avoid some of the pitfalls that we're experiencing in our everyday reality. And I know that the certain things that are happening right now, they require a more direct approach. So I'm not saying that that's the answer. There's other things that need to be more immediately addressed. But I think that as we learn about our ancient past and our abilities and who we really are, we can begin to go into a different direction. I don't think we'll be necessarily treating each other the way that we are now, because I think we'll understand who we are. And I also don't think that we'll be so docile. So I think we'll be more powerful, and we'll be more, I think we'll honor each other more. And also I think that this serpent energy and the serpent worship also talked about being in harmony with the earth, being in harmony with the stars. It's like these serpent beings, the Quetzalcoatl, the Thoth, all of these, what people think who are gods, but really they're just, I guess you would want to call like just more advanced beings. They talked about how to be in more harmony. And I think that that's what we're coming to, is how do we get back to some of these things that can restore harmony?
I would also like to know how to get back to more harmony.
Yeah.
One of the things that is going on though, when you get to take a look at everything, and it literally is spiritual warfare, like keeping people in poverty, keeping people, literally ripping children from their parents. It is creating fear, and that is one of the lowest vibrations. And so when you keep people in a perpetual state of fear, you are constantly in survival mode. And so that keeps you, in your root chakra, that keeps you in that serpent mentality of survival.
Yeah.
But like when you start to have the freedom, or let's say privilege, to not be in survival mode all the time, then you can reach that heart center. And you can. So yeah, I mean, definitely sharing knowledge is a good way to help people to kind of wake up and start to like do the work to kind of like claim your own sovereignty. And we're really seeing that in the world. I'm really seeing that.
I do want to see like more healing retreats or offerings that are targeting communities, like you said, where they're keeping people in perpetual like fear or perpetual survival mode. You don't have the luxury to think about, a quantum healing session when it's like, I literally have to work 2 different jobs just to make sure everybody in my house stays fed enough so that they don't die.
Yeah.
Like we have children starving, just all kinds of, like you said, tactics to keep people having to just survive, and that's all they can think about. So I would like to see some like healing outreach into those communities. How do we get, to the children? How do we get to those like single moms who are doing this very important work of survival? Like they can't come out, the root chakra. They don't even know they're in the root chakra. They don't even have time to think about chakras.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like we need to empower the people. It's like people who are coming to power, to me, I still don't feel like are the right people who are going to lead the fight. Again, I'm getting on my soapbox about, the revolution and the people, but
no, but it all ties in.
Yeah.
And I think, I've even, for some reason, over the last couple of weeks, I've seen certain things on social media where they're kind of attacking religion and Christianity in the sense that like, look, y'all been praying to this same God for a long time and you guys live shitty lives. Now I know that's triggering, and I know that that's a bit aggressive, but if we want to be like objective, there's something to that. I think that a lot of us, how do we reach those people and remind them of who they are? How do we do that? Because sometimes people are so afraid to not honor their God because they're taught, don't seek out any other information, even though there's serpent worship tied to Christianity and before that, and potentially Christianity may be even based on serpent worship in a lot of ways. People don't want to hear that. They're afraid to hear that. So it's like, how do we bring this information or reach to people that are not open?
Putting it out there. This podcast is free.
Planting seeds.
Share this podcast with a friend, your neighbor, your local, religious fanatic.
So speaking of the Bible and serpents, I want to circle it back here to talk about one of the stories in the Bible where we see a serpent. And this is actually in the Torah. This is in Exodus. And we see Moses, he's at the burning bush, which arguably is a crashed UFO, but that's another topic. And the bush it's on fire, and it starts talking to Moses, and he's up on top of the mountain, and the bush is like, hey, what's that in your hand? And he's like, it's a staff. And then the bush is like, no, it ain't. And it turns into a snake.
I like how you tell stories.
I like your bush voice, by the way. I just want to put that out there, that I'm really into this character you've created.
I'm with it.
So the alien, it's a serpent. And then it turns back into a staff. And he's like, all right, now take this and go. Gives him a bunch of instructions. He comes down, 10 commandments, blah, blah, blah. Well, Moses ends up using this staff for a lot of things. One of the things is that like he takes it to the pharaohs and he's like, my staff turns into a snake. And they're like, oh yeah, bitch, ours does too. But then like, I guess his staff ended up, his serpent staff ended up eating all theirs up. And he's like, yeah, what's up? So then he ends up using this to part the Red Sea, which I find very sexual, actually, because when we talk about the dark goddess and we talk about using her sexuality not for procreation, so when a woman is ovulating, it's like a white sea, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then like the Red Sea is like when you're menstruating.
And when you're menstruating means you're fucking and not getting pregnant.
Yeah. So he takes his serpent staff, which like, I mean,
name a more phallical
like
symbol. Yeah.
Exactly. And he like parts the Red Sea with it. And so that even is like a current term thrown out there when you're fucking a girl on her period. It's like, yeah, I'm parting the Red Sea. I'm getting my red wings. And so we see this symbol. And so yeah, with the serpent being like a symbol with like the dark goddess.
Yeah.
Like, so find that interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like sex on your period is a very dark goddess kind of.
Hey, I think like, listen,
I like, hey,
you might not go anywhere else ever.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's some, I have a friend of mine who is part native and they're taught, you know, to be careful with fluid exchange,
right? Because
that's magic, you know what I mean? And we have to be careful with that. And so yeah, that alchemy there, you have to be careful because you know you may be not necessarily cementing some things, but you may be really intermingling, and it may be difficult to like depart from certain people,
energetically,
or disconnect.
Yeah.
And you know what? Actually, this is a little kind of a side note, but I think it's still relevant. I have to look at my notes to get the name, but James Watson and Francis Crick, they discovered DNA, like the double helix, and it was on an LSD trip.
Yeah.
Whoa. So that's also associated with like, again, the serpent. Yeah. That too. So it's like within our DNA.
Yeah.
Too. And they actually won like a Nobel Prize for that. Yeah. So there's, again, so we're talking about the Kundalini energy with the serpent. We're talking about our DNA.
So there's something else with the DNA too, though. Do you know that supposedly we're supposed to be 12 helixed beings, and they've unplugged all but 2 to keep us in that, like we said earlier,
12
mentality.
12-strand DNA.
12-strand DNA. Did you also know that the snakes in the Chinese astrology, one of every 12 years is named for the snake?
Yes.
So there's a lot of with the numbers, systems, institutions, that whole
and I think even a lot of people talk about ascension. I think that goes back to activating our DNA, because they say we have all of this junk DNA, but it's just that it was unplugged supposedly by the Anunnaki when they created us. And so they wanted us to be, again, more in that slave mentality. So they disconnected some. So now we're doing the work of reactivating it.
Actually, when I first like went through my spiritual awakening, I started hanging out with these people and they're like, yeah, you can activate your 12-strand DNA right now. And so I started listening to like solfeggio frequencies to like activate my latent DNA. And then they say like, if you cut the fluoride out of your water, you can activate more DNA, calcify your pineal gland.
I buy fluoride-free toothpaste only, and definitely try to take the fluoride out of my water.
I have a dope water filter that cuts out all the fluoride. But I'm like one of those like conspiracy theorists who's like also a realist, and so I do sometimes use fluoride toothpaste because I have sensitive teeth, but I don't drink it.
You're like,
that's
but
okay, just
I'm also
it.
human, and I have
just bless it before
change its frequency with my.
I feel like I don't know if fluoride could do it to you now. You might be a little too powerful for even fluoride.
Right.
I might be above fluoride.
You might be above fluoride.
You know what though? A lot of like, you know, when you hear like these people who are like channelers or these more advanced people that are in the spiritual community, they talk about that, like all this stuff that's happening, like chemtrails and fluoride and all this stuff, like that's the 5G, all of that stuff is attacking us. But because we're so resilient and powerful, we can adjust and adapt and overpower that shit.
Yeah.
So we just, come on.
And also on that note, I think also like you see a lot of healers and people who have like done the work to awaken and everything, and you start vibrating real high, and then you got to do something to bring yourself down.
Yeah, eat a cheeseburger, damn.
Yeah, it's something or something like that. Yeah,
I mean, like grass fed, you know, like
I'm
like
not,
a good organic beef,
right?
But sure, yeah.
No, just
like,
an example
fucking,
to my vegans and vegetarians.
No,
Namaste.
like for real, smoke a blunt and like chill the fuck out.
Yeah, party a little bit,
drink a Mad Dog,
have some fun.
Mad Dog.
I don't know why I thought about Mad Dog. The bar I was at last night had like big ass. That's like the thing. They sell them there.
Are you serious?
Were you at Now That's Class?
I was at Now That's Class.
I haven't had Mad Dog since like the 90s.
I love that place. Except when like when they have like really cool events and it's not like they're like super orchestrated, like popular, you know, events.
Take me to have some
I
Mad
got
Dog.
this snake ring that I'm wearing right now at a show at Now That's Class for this band that I love called Reactivating. They are a postmodern, like Brazilian, all-femme punk band. They're fucking amazing.
Nice.
One of their albums has a snake on the cover. Listen to that if you're trying to like tap into that.
Ooh, we'll have to put that in the show notes.
Yeah. We're going to give you music suggestions now. Maybe I'll start making playlists. We'll see.
Yeah, but like on that note, it's like serpent again, like knowledge, spiritual knowledge, Kundalini. Like sometimes you hit this level, like when you're kind of going through your awakening, you're like clearing and let me like, my body is a temple and everything. But then you get to this point where you're like, I gotta just like be grounded. I gotta like come down and I gotta go to a show at a punk bar and I gotta, it's just like,
You have to me, it's like you also have to be ready to like, not necessarily be in like aggressive mode, but I know for me, I used to be like a hothead, you know, and I used to be kind of like sometimes aggressive. And then I try to like get that out of me. Like I try to like be more zen and more non-reactive. And then I felt like I became too docile in certain situations. So it's like, it could be detrimental if you go too far. You've got to find like that middle ground.
Well, that's what I mean. Like with the, going back to the snake with like dosage.
Yeah. You can't just be like elevating like, oh, I'm trying to break through all my chakras 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And just sit in like constant. I mean, I guess you can, but even monks take breaks.
Well, yeah. Like, so, and I'll give this example. I had a client who, so in the quantum healing community, there's some talk around the new earth and ascension, right? And that's all relative and that's all good. But this specific client was younger, like in the early 20s. And he was looking at ascending. But there's some stuff you got to do here with your body. You've got to, there's some emotional stuff you have to work through. So, we came here, right, for a reason. So sometimes it's like we look at Earth as being this like hell or like not spiritual. But why did we come here then?
Earth is so spiritual.
Yeah,
it's
like
our home.
Yeah.
That's why like sometimes I do have problems with like the spiritual community as of late. It's like, oh, why are you worried about like politics and like racism? That's like so, 3D or just like this dimension. You're not thinking past, into the other dimensions. It's like, well, because we're fucking here.
We are.
Like I'm waking up in this body every day. In this world.
Yeah,
so
it's a little bit of spiritual bypassing.
Yeah,
I feel like
sure.
ascension for me, I used to love that idea and like think that like it was like, the aliens were going to come and like flip a switch and everything was going to be awesome. But then I just kind of realized like, okay, no, like ascension is like waking up my chakras and me waking up to myself and me going back out into the world and not being separate from the world, but participating in it and doing what I can do to make the world a little bit better.
Right.
Yeah.
Participating in a meaningful way.
Yeah. And here's the thing too, like knowing, like, for example, I hate politics. I will kill myself if I have to listen to like a show. That's just not my lane. But I don't think that it's not necessarily important. That's just not my lane. And I think what people do is sometimes it's like, because it's not their lane, they somehow find some sort of fault in it. Why not just understand, like, look, this is my role. This is what I'm here to do. Yeah. Hey, Stephanie, you want to be in a policy? Hey, that's awesome for you. But I feel like, again, it's that dualistic nature. It's like, this is good, this is bad.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's like we all have our own way of being. Like, for example, we could argue that some people incarnate to be the bad guy. This guy is supposed to be the murderer. I'm not saying like that's a very difficult concept to think about, right? Because that's a very macro view. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't want anyone coming in to murder anyone in my family. I wouldn't be thinking about any sort of spiritual concept if that happened. But if we step back and see the whole, that is a potential reality. And I know even in my exploration of my past lives, there have been times where I've been the queen and I've been the prostitute that would rob people. I've done all of it. And most of us have been the saint and been the sinner.
Totally.
And it's that duality thing that from a human perspective, again, we do look at it as like very simplistic, and it's not.
It's not at all.
No, to be human is so complex.
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel like that's what we get lost from is like, seeing all those faults and those things and those primal things. And, even thinking about the reptilian brain, but it's all a part of us.
Yeah.
And people just want to, like you said, like bypass certain things and aspects.
Yeah. Like if someone was coming in and trying to hurt my son, I for sure want to tap into my reptilian brain.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
I'm going
sure.
in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want to meditate
poison.
at that point.
No.
I don't want to like send you love. No, like somebody's not coming out of this house alive.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like, again, it's about when it's appropriate and knowing. It's almost like being able to flip flop in that duality versus trying to avoid a certain aspect. It's like, no, I know when to do what.
Yeah.
I know how to ebb and flow.
I was reading about like prey and predator also for this when I was doing some of the research for this, but it was talking about, the intimacy of the predator and the prey, and everybody has to play their part because that's what keeps the world moving.
Yeah.
Nature.
Yeah. And, the animal only kills for food or to defend. But man is that only animal that kills for like pleasure and like they get some satisfaction out of it that is not something physical that they need in their world.
Yeah.
It's like an animal's like, yes, they're going to kill because they need to defend their land or their area or their, group.
There's a reason.
There's always a
big
reason. They're not just killing. It's like, oh, you're also here.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
I think
So,
we'll talk about that on our next one. We'll talk about blood on the next one.
Oh,
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and I don't know if this is true or not. I didn't verify this, but someone told me that there have been times where snakes were observed, and if they're under distress, they will consume themselves.
oh, okay.
So that goes to our self-destructive nature that we can definitely. I know for me, I have been more destructive to myself than I think anyone else has. Like, like if we think about it, how we have that inner voice, 9 times out of 10, we'll talk to ourselves more destructively and harshly than we would to our child or our partner.
It's
Oh, yeah.
true.
So that was an interesting thing too, that paralleled like humans and serpents.
Why I like chew my own skin off.
So I actually, some of us here have snake tattoos. So I actually have the Ouroboros on
Do
my
you?
arm.
Yeah, you do.
It's the snake eating its tail.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's what he was telling me about.
And so you're gonna love this.
Okay.
So number one, the night I got this tattoo, I had a dream,
you would.
and Hermes came to me. Hermes Trismegistus.
Yes.
And yeah, the connection with the staff and the double snake. He actually holds the snake staff with the double helix.
Yeah.
Asclepius, which we also talked about, has the staff with the single snake on it.
Okay.
Both deal with healing, and as we see on the side of ambulances and the healing profession, we see this serpent symbolism there. So yeah, the Ouroboros is a symbol of the snake eating its tail, as Lynette described, that this also happens in nature. And it does have a lot to do with renewal and digesting your experiences. So on the note of self-destructive behavior, the sign of Scorpio is actually, they have like a rap for being like vengeful and that, but like that's if you're like in lowest vibration Scorpio mode, so like survival mode, like the scorpion. Okay, as I mentioned before, it has other incarnations. And but yeah, the Scorpios in general do have like a self-sabotaging quality to them because they want to be in control. There's a quality to Scorpio that says like, I know like shit's eventually going to go bad, so I might as well be in control of the destruction. So you see that a lot there. But yeah.
What would you say about, I've heard that Scorpios are kind of like this energy that if they're around, let's just call it negativity, they can go that way. But then if they're around like light and positivity, they can go that way, so that their environment can really impact them. So that speaks to the duality. What would you say about that?
I would say that that's kind of a water trait in general.
Okay.
Like Cancers definitely have
adaptable.
That makes sense.
And Pisces as well. Pisces, I would say, is more than anything like a sponge, and more like I'm going to adapt to my environment and everything. Cancer is really sensitive in that respect. It kind of like holds. So the symbol of Cancer, it looks like a mother like nursing a child, and it's like holding. If you look at a Cancer, they often have their arms crossed across them. It's like a protective mechanism. So they need a lot of alone time to process those things. Scorpio too is a very psychic and magnetic sign, but the Scorpion usually lurks in the shadows. So we see similar things with like snakes. Like they live in like harsh environments. The Scorpion lives in a desert. Snakes often live in deserts. Although snakes live everywhere. They also like live in water. They live in marshes. They live in cold environments. But yeah, the Scorpion, I would say, has a little bit of a harder shell. It's a little bit more resilient, but it is always watchful. It's always like, I am weary that someone has like bad intentions.
Yeah, my son is a Scorpio. When he was little, people would think that he couldn't talk. And he talked since he was like, before he was like 1 year old. But when we went home from wherever we were, he knew who had what on, who said what. He knew like the whole play by play. He just didn't care to talk to anyone. He was just in there to like
observe,
peep what was going on. Yeah.
So the head and the tail of the snake, like you see this symbolism a lot, like especially in the constellation I mentioned earlier, but also there is a legend through Hindu mythology where there's a dragon and it wants to eat the sun and the moon, and that's why we get eclipses. So without getting into the whole mythology, but basically they cut it in half and they have it like kind of chasing each other, and the head is just very voracious. It's the north node and wants to eat. And then the tail is a little bit more like the spiritual side.
Yeah.
So you see that symbolism in that story as well.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't know. I think I may have mentioned this before, but I want to mention it again because it relates to this. But in one of my ayahuasca ceremonies, I actually had this experience where I don't remember like any visuals, or it wasn't like anything like a story, but I felt like I was fighting the whole time. Like I didn't know up or down. I was vomiting everywhere. I was just like in the fight for my life. And when after the ceremony, it was like I conquered the dragon, and the dragon was myself. And to this day, and when we were researching this, it made me think back to that. Like, what does that mean? Because I didn't have any affiliation or fascination with dragons at all. Like, so it wasn't something that like, oh, I think dragons are cool. Like, why would I even have that intuition that it was about that? And it was almost like, yeah. So it's like, what was that about? So again, that goes back to the archetype. Like, I feel like these energies are like trying to help us awaken. And like, I really encourage people to like do their own research, look at the emerald tablets, look at the Anunnaki, look at Thoth, Quetzalcoatl, Hermes, like some of these, and these, you'll find these parallels. And I think that a lot of us could find benefit in just learning more about this. I think, and I think these ancient beings, I think they're calling to us too. To like come back to earth, because a lot of this serpent worship was also about like earth, that earth energy. So it's like calling us back to our roots.
Yeah. And I think it's that the snake too deals with all of the elements. Like you said, like they can live in water. They do, go underground, fire, rebirth. They're always kind of associated with that, and air in the same way with the feathered.
Yeah. The
dragon. So it is one of those, totems that kind of comes, no pun intended, full circle. But yeah, I think that's why also it has such a significance. And the fact that it's able to, a lot of animals and totems have all sorts of like cool things they can do.
Yeah.
But there's something about the snake, that it just like,
it's just super primal.
Yes. And very alluring.
And should be handled with care.
Handle them with care. But you should handle them. I'm telling you, it was It was beautiful.
They are precious. I did get to hold a snake one time. One of my friends in New York was like babysitting a snake, and I got to hold it, and it was kind of similar experience that you
Very
described,
soothing.
where it's like, I like you, but like I'm not gonna like hold you to my chest. Really, like.
I mean, I did. But.
Honoring.
Yeah, and it's weird. You can like feel them, like, because they will wrap around your arm. Obviously, they like, you know, that's why they have like branches and stuff in their tanks. But when like later that day, and even the next morning, I still almost felt like that phantom constricting happening in my arm, and it like I had such a longing for it.
Interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I do have another interesting real life snake story. So my stepsister got bit by a snake and almost died.
What?
Yeah. She was creeping around in Costa Rica trying to watch the sea turtles migrate, and like she went off the path when like maybe she shouldn't have at night, and she was bit, but it wasn't obviously like a huge snake, or else like you would have known, because then she gets on a plane and comes back to Cleveland, and she's here working, and then all of a sudden she's like not feeling very well, and they had to ship in emergency anti-venom to rescue her.
That's wild.
That's
like
wild.
snake medicine for
That's
real. For
snake
real.
medicine. Like what? Yeah, what was going on in her life? I'm like curious as to what, you know.
That's a not so subtle.
Yeah.
Well,
sign.
she is a Scorpio.
Ah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and may or may not have connection to the story, but when you call a guy a snake, that usually, like, when you call a guy a snake, like, oh, he's such a snake.
Yeah.
Isn't it mostly in like sexually devious context?
Or like they're untrustworthy. They're, I guess, well, like you could call a person a snake. Like I'm pretty sure somebody at some point called me that. But like, yeah, like you're kind of devious. You're, you know, out to get what you want. You can't really be trusted. So like the snake in the Jungle Book.
Yeah.
Trying to make Mowgli, you know, see things its way, and it does. It hypnotizes him. You think about the snake charming and things like that. So, I mean, I can see why, you know, it's seen as like a bad thing, but it's a compliment to me, so you can call me a snake all you want.
I saw another video way back. It was like there was a sleeping baby, and there was a few cobras, and they were up dancing, and they were protecting this freaking baby. And you look at that video and you're like, what parent?
Who put their baby in there?
But yeah, like the cobras are like protecting this baby.
Yeah.
That's super dope. Well, there's also correlations between like the snake and the soul, because they said like the snake is like footless, right? So when it moves, it doesn't leave any tracks. And so like the soul is like you can't grab it, you can't quantify it, you can't.
It's not traceable.
So, right. So yeah, it's like that parallel.
That's also another thing too. Yeah, it's like moving silence.
Yeah. Silence. And I honestly like I like the fact that you brought up like the charming aspect of it, because I feel like I don't know, I like connect with that. I think maybe it's my past life when I would like rob men and like fuck them and like steal their money.
Hit it and quit it.
Yeah. You're like
but I think there's something beautiful about like that real feminine energy. It's like, listen, if a guy's super strong and he can like lift mad weights or run really fast on the football field, everybody's like, yeah, you're the shit. But if a woman is charming and alluring and magnetic, it's bad. Like, why though? You know what I mean? Like, again, I know that any energy can be misused, but I just want to like kind of tap into that a little bit more.
That's that Lilith energy.
that is that Lilith energy. That's when I've always felt at my most powerful, when I feel like I am charming and alluring and things like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like it is kind of, that's why we, you know, put on our little high heels or like wear makeup or, you know, it is, that's what we do as women. The same way like men try to, you know, fucking peacock out with their like chests and their biceps, and
They talk about their car or something. or
yeah.
career.
I mean, even, you know, when you're thinking about not just like men and women in the binary sense, but even those like energies.
Yeah,
the
the
masculine
roles.
energy wants to be more like
Yeah.
broad chested and
Yeah.
like puffed out.
Yeah.
big
and-
colors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where like the female, even when we dance,
Yeah.
you know, the
Little
female, the hips, the
Right.
swiveling, that like feminine energy.
Yeah.
Um, that's why, you know,
seductive and mysterious.
seductive and mysterious.
But it's with that drop of wisdom, right? So it's like we don't want to use that to like necessarily manipulate someone. But if I'm like, whether I'm in like a serious relationship or just having a romantic relationship with someone, doesn't that man want to feel like he doesn't have some control? Like, my God, like, I don't even know how to like manage my emotions. Like, it's like they're afraid of being out of control, but they want to feel out of control. They want to feel like they can't keep their hands off of you.
Carnal knowledge.
And they can't keep their hands on you because you're wiggly.
Yeah, so again, like, the snake is a symbol of power. It is a symbol of regeneration. It's a symbol of sensuality and wisdom. And as we've talked about too, a lot of times you see the snake with the dark goddess archetype as like an initiation, a symbol of initiation. You don't just get wisdom just from wanting it. I mean, there are trials and tribulations that you go through to become wise. And so that's really a part of it. That's the dance that you do. That's the snake dance that you do in life.
Even like, you know, you're thinking, I don't know why this just popped in my head, but like Cleopatra, allegedly when she killed herself because they were coming to get her anyway, and she didn't want to die in the hands of someone else. She wanted to die her very way, which was, you know, being bathed in like milk and then putting like cinnamon oil in her hair and letting a venomous cobra bite her in the neck.
I didn't know that story.
Yeah, so that's apparently how she died.
It's like the sexiest way to die
I am like,
I've ever heard.
I'm putting that in my will. Y'all better make that happen with my crickety ass little body.
Like, bathe Stephanie in milk.
Bathe me in some milk. Put cinnamon oil in my
down.
hair and let a snake bite me. I don't want to die any other way.
Right.
She also was the first woman to have her own library. So I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cleopatra.
Right. Cleopatra.
Be my
Duly
goddess.
noted.
Be my spirit guide.
Right. Tap into that.
All right. So I think that about wraps it up here.
That feels good.
Ending notes? Any other ending notes? Should we end on the Cleopatra?
Oh, I don't know. We could end on the Cleopatra. Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered most of.
Yeah, so join us in our curiosity. We're so curious to understand more deeply the connection to serpents across all cultures and even, I guess, within our own bodies.
Yeah.
And we look at our sensuality and our Kundalini and our reptile brain and blood.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear, like, if anyone has, you know, a perspective, if they've done any of their own research, if they have any of their own experiences. I would love for them to like email us.
Yeah, especially me. Yeah, I want to hear all about your snake magic and how I can find more of it.
For sure.
One last note. Don't you have a serpent tattoo, Stephanie?
I actually don't have a serpent tattoo.
Oh, you just have like the jewelry. And
everything. So
Now
I have
she's
a
gonna
few
work on
snake
that.
rings. I do no. So also I do want to get a snake tattoo on my hand because I only have my hands tattooed. I don't have any on my arms, so I'm trying to keep it that way. But yeah, that would be my next go round. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
So, Stephanie, where can our listeners connect with you?
You can connect with me probably on Instagram's like the easiest at st.ginese. You could email me at Ginese, same thing, my last name, Ginese, at gmail.com if you want to have, I don't know, some type of conversation. You want to publish my book. You want to give me a snake or any of those things.
You're accepting snake donations.
I'm accepting snake donations. I'm accepting donations in general because I had to get my car fixed today.
You want to give out like your Venmo and Cash App?
Oh, so my Venmo is at @sginese as well. Just send me money, please.
Thank you, universe. And do you have any events coming up that we should know about?
I do sort of not really have any. I'm reading tarot tomorrow at Quintana's. I do my monthly there, but that's typically like sold out in advance. No big deal. Or you can find me at Coven every Friday and Saturday from 3 to 8. I am there reading tarot. Stop by. Let's talk about snakes. Let's read your tarot. Let's hang out because Coven's dope. Yeah.
Cool. And then Lynette, how can we connect with you, and do you have any events we should know about?
Yeah, so you can find me at LynetteRamos.com, and then on IG, Lynette.Maris, and the number 3. And I have a project that's in its beginning stages, but it's something I've been wanting to do for a really long time. It's connecting with the Latino, Latina, how do you say Latinx?
Latinx, yeah.
Yes. Community. It's going to be including music and drumming and dancing and art. So that's in its beginning stages. I'm super excited about it.
Oh, yeah, I'll be at that meeting too.
Stephanie is going to be coming into that. Yeah.
Yeah, represent.
Yeah. And then in the winter, I'd like to do some traveling, and I'd like to connect with some ancient sites or in South America. And I want to do some videos and kind of I eventually want to do a documentary. So I want to start doing more like videos and shooting. So those are some things that I'm working on, but primarily currently I'm working with quantum healing.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What about you, Catherine?
So I'm teaching an astrology class at Coven this actually not this Wednesday. Well, who knows? Maybe by the time you hear this. But anyways, it's Wednesday, August 21st. I will be teaching a class on the houses and astrology. So what we're trying to do at Coven is I'm trying to cover a lot of the beginner astrology basics. So I did the zodiac class, and I did a Mercury retrograde class, and now we're going to be talking about the houses. Really, my main goal is I just want to plug in and gauge your interest. If you're interested in astrology, and if you're interested in taking classes on astrology at Coven, let me know. Please email me or message me on Instagram at AstroCatherine. I really just want to know what you guys are interested in and what you would like to learn. So again, that's 7 p.m. August 21st. It's a Wednesday at Coven. So that's my next thing.
Yeah, I want to go to that.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, well, that about wraps it up for this episode on serpents and snakes. And so we're the fallen fruit, and thank you for joining us in our treehouse, and we will catch you next time.
Peace.
See you later.